I've been asked many times in the past few months, both by my mentees as well as by some other colleagues, what it takes to be a very good crisis communicator, or actually who can be a very good crisis communicator. What are the criteria one must fulfill to be able to do that? I'm going to start by telling you who cannot work in crisis communication. If you cannot keep your head, if you become emotionally involved and take sides in a crisis, if you don't have a good understanding of the principles of human psychology and anthropology, and if you get easily offended, you cannot work in crisis communication. If you have never been through a crisis, either as an observer or impacted by it, it will be very difficult for you to understand the enormous ramifications and implications of a crisis. These can be, of course, financial, operational, human, and reputational. If you do not know or understand the world of business beyond that of public relations and communication, and if you have minimal environmental and situational knowledge, as in PASL and industry specific, you cannot advise, let alone lead, the communication function, response, or recovery of any organization during and after a crisis. No degree, diploma, or qualification will ever prepare you for the moment when all eyes are on you and all the walls start crumbling down around you, and for the time when everyone is expecting you to be the savior. Understand that you are not. The organization itself only, and by that I mean the leadership only, are the ones who can survive or navigate through a crisis. You are there to offer advice and guidance, nothing more and nothing less. Whether they choose to heed your advice, it is entirely up to them. My only advice to you would be that of not trusting anyone or anything that you are being told or shown. You have to verify the validity and accuracy of everything from at least one other source inside or outside the organization. When emotions run high, pardon me, when people lose their lives or livelihoods, when countries are at war or torn apart from within, mistakes are made and misinformation spreads like wildfire. Your biggest detractor in times of crisis is often, very often, and more often than you can possibly think, is the leadership of that organization. They will pull apart every single recommendation you make and all your arguments for any course of action. They will do so because if they choose to follow your advice, the survival of that organization may rest on your advice. Crisis communication, let alone management, preparedness, and recovery, is a highly specialized area of practice, one which requires an almost perfect understanding of not just the tools and techniques of the trade, but also of its various models and theoretical concepts, corroborated with an uncanny ability, your ability, to see the bigger picture. That means horizon scanning and situation modeling. Knee-jerk reactions, the now, quickly part, are common in a crisis communication. Thinking and taking a step back are considered a luxury when they are anything but. How any organization acts and reacts in times of crisis will impact everything it does in the future. It's the analogy I often use about ripples in the water, and those of you who have been through the school of Alaminti know that very well. While the splash from the impact of the stone hitting the water is considerable, the ripples that action generates are far more important. Why? Because they are the additional consequences, if you wish, of that impact. Every crisis is different. People filter the veiled or the forthright messages in a crisis through their own personal filters. These filters are a concoction of an individual's social background, age, gender, culture, religion, nationality, education, experience, and so on. It is crucial, therefore, that you understand when you speak about a stakeholder map, you don't just put together that map in terms of large groups such as communities, employees, regulators, media, blah, blah. No, those are the ginormous pillars. Those are the foundations, if you want. But each of those groups comes with its own very little sub-pocket, I would call it, of mini-groups. You have to know them all because keep in mind what I've just said earlier about perception filters. They are all different and you have to cater to those differences. Also work very carefully on the language that you are using, when you are using it, and with whom you are using it, because not everyone understands the same thing, and you cannot afford any confusion in a crisis situation. Mr. Aristotle taught us the importance of ethos, logos, and pathos. You have been given, most of us anyway, two eyes to use and two ears to listen with. Sadly, in a crisis, very few are able to use their eyes and ears more than they use their mouths. The more you speak, the less you will hear. And the more you watch, the more you will see, learn, and even better, observe. Do not reinvent the wheel unless you must. Most organizations have well-established crisis response procedures which hopefully will have been rehearsed and tested. Work with what you have, if you can, and build on that. A crisis is not the time for revision. The post-crisis, i.e. the recovery or rebuilding phase, is. Do not let your emotions overcloud your judgment. If it gets too much for you to handle, step back or remove yourself from the situation. Love, hate, like, dislike, personal politics, and so on have absolutely no place in times of crisis. You are human. You will get tired. You will get pulled in all directions. And sometimes you will be blamed for everything. Look after yourself and never be more than 100% professional. Your reputation and ability as a crisis communicator rely on how you hold yourself together and provide the right advice.